Everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and we're going to bring you another update on the YZF-R1 2022 Superbike project. And this one is not going to take a year, so that's very exciting for you guys. What we're going to be doing today is, first of all, this is Martin. He's going to be helping us with this project. He's one of our technicians, and so he's going to be very heavily involved with what you're going to see going on with this motorcycle from here on out. So as promised in the last one, we're going to be focusing on some data this time. So what we've got here is some of our favorite bits for basically your plug and play electronics for these motorcycles. So by that, I mean we have button pods or switches that are plug and play with a factory or kit harness, depending on which configuration you order. These just look super nice. They're tidy, and when you crash, they don't immediately explode like the stock bits do. And we have ABS delete here from i2M. Just another great way to save weight and have something that's nice and compact compared to the original ABS pump, which we've already pulled out, so I can't show you, but it's effing huge. This is a Domino ride-by-wire throttle assembly. The purpose of that is it's just, for one, it allows you to separate the throttle housing from the stock switch pod, which if you've seen these from the factory, again, that's not there anymore. The stock one, it's all one big chunk of plastic, and it not a very good design, unfortunately, for race use. When you crash, they almost always fail. And obviously, with this actually being your throttle sensor in here, you need this to be nice and sound, because it can be very dangerous if this has an issue. And frankly, the ECU is sensitive. If it detects a fault, it'll just shut the bike off. Essentially, the throttle will die. So it's good to have a nice race quality throttle like this. And it's got a little bit shorter of a throw, so another benefit. And then kind of the crown jewel of this kit that we're going to use is this Super Trick dash. This is the i2M Chrome Pro 2. We've been doing chromes for a long time, but this is the latest and greatest version of it. This thing is kind of a turnkey plug and play data acquisition system and replacement dash. What's great about this is it's truly plug and play. You buy everything you need to just directly interface with the factory harness. And once you set it up, just following some basic menu prompts in the dash, it'll just work right away. It shows everything that you needed to see. It actually shows trouble codes, all kinds of stuff. And it has just a plethora of available data. So it comes with, actually, this version comes with a TPMS sensor, so this will actually interface with your wheels. You can, I think this system now supports up to like 16 wheels or something like that. It's several sets. And you can label them in the dash by specific identifiers that you can put like a sticker or whatever and use that reference in the dash. So very user-friendly. And then we have a handful of their specific components. This is the actual plug and play adapter that allows it to interface with the stock or kit harness that we're using. Some pots. This is what makes the sensors for the kit plug and play. It also comes with a lambda sensor. This just allows you to log lambda, and it actually has, aside from looking at this stuff in their data acquisition software, which we'll show you at some point, it has the conventional time and distance graphs that you can look at. It also has like a very basic table that it saves, where it shows almost like a fuel map. It shows a grid of load versus RPM, and it shows what your lambda is at a given point. So if you wanted to quickly reference that without having to plug the computer in, you could actually look at that and make quick adjustments on the fly. It's kind of cool. And then lastly, the latest update with this is they actually have a built-in crash protector. That's the one downside, is we do see these come back sometimes because people have crashed and broken the screen. It's not terribly expensive to have repaired, but it's inconvenient. So the new ones have this built-in screen protector. So if you smash it enough to get through that, you probably have other concerns. So it's a good improvement. So yeah, next what we're going to do is just start mocking this stuff up. And depending how interesting or uninteresting it is, you may not see all of that. We might just fast forward to the good bits. So stay tuned. Another quick thing we want to show you before we get too far in this dash is we've got this really trick fairing stay and intake duct assembly. This is a full piece of autoclave carbon. This is obviously just a really nice piece that we're going to run. I think it'll let the bike breathe a bit better, and it's for sure going to be lighter than the motor holders that we have on there. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great piece, and honestly, they survive crashing really well. We'll see about this one, but super trick, so we're going to have to do that. And since we're going to be mounting the dash, it makes sense to go ahead and knock that out right now. Alrighty, so we've got some updates. Martin has got everything kind of mocked up here. This is sort of, you can see the dash is mounted to this fairing stay, and behind here you can see the plug and play dash mount kit. This all comes with this setup. The only thing that you have to reuse is these grommets, which come from the factory fairing stay. It's really important, as Martin pointed out, that these are isolated from any vibration, because it can absolutely damage or potentially destroy the electronics. So with that in mind, he observed that there's some contact here. And so what we're going to do is just clearance this to make sure we don't have any issues there. Other than that, it's all been pretty straightforward, and we'll start with routing everything and trying to make this look as tidy as possible. All right, everyone, we're back in the shop, and Martin's already got our right-hand side controls sort of mocked up. We've, of course, already had the master cylinder on there, and then we've got our bike sport development button pads that we always use, and the domino throttles in place. So there's a clamp that comes with these bike sport developments button pods that you can use to mount it directly to the master cylinder, and we've got this mated to the gale speed. What we actually use is the Brembo XRO series clamp, and it's off by 0.5 millimeter, so you have to slot the holes just basically 1/4 millimeter on each one to allow it to fit. It's a very small modification, but just something I wanted to point out, that they don't make a direct fit for the gale speed, but it's a super simple modification to make it work. So moving right along, we've got a few other things we're going to cover in this video. Along the electronic end of things, this is going to be a good upgrade for this application. While we're still running the kit stuff, Translogic makes a really nice plug-and-play shift sensor, and the reason we use these is they're more reliable. It's for sure a much better sensor in terms of feel and performance, but they just don't fail as often. Don't get me wrong, the Yamaha ones aren't going bad left and right, but it does happen. So this is the idea here, is to eliminate that, because these things almost never go bad. And it's plug and play. So typically, you know, I haven't personally installed one of these. Then again, I don't really install anything here, but normally these kits come with essentially everything to mate to your bike. And typically this plug, which we'll read the instructions to confirm, is to enable you to reverse the polarity of the sensor that's on there. So you know how on the Yamaha, you can't reverse polarity. If you want to run standard and GP, what you're supposed to do is move it from here to here, because it's the same effective load on the sensor. What we always prefer to do with the GP shift setup is to reverse the shift knuckle and still keep the sensor connected to the end of the shift arm. With this setup, you'd be able to do that by simply installing that connector. So we're going to go ahead and get this opened up and see how it looks. All right, everyone, so we've just come back. We're going to be picking this back up. Today is Monday. I've actually just returned from a test with Westby, and we did a lot of work on Matthews Electronics, and I'm happy to say that we're really happy with how things are progressing on that new firmware, but that's why we've been away. Martin has been unfortunately unable to work on this because I won't let him when I'm not here, because we want to film everything for you guys. So he has been nice enough to go ahead and start swapping out some titanium bolts. We have a ton of tie bolts around here, so you'll see, looking over the bike, that there's going to be a lot of areas where you see the anodized bits. We're going to try to use anodized tie where possible, but I haven't anodized all of them, so you might see some plain tie in here, like this one, for example. And then regarding the quick shifter, so we actually spoke with one of the technical people at Translogic, and we're not going to be able to do what we had wanted to do with that shift sensor in regards to repinning it. Apparently there's a voltage offset in that sensor that's designed to replicate the OEM sensor, and simply reversing those two pins, as we've seen on, like, say, the Ducati V4 OEM sensor, does not work like that on the Yamaha one. So what they're going to do is make us a special version, and we're going to get that in soon and mount it up, and I'll speak with those guys if it's something, and if you guys have interest in running it the way we do, I'll talk with them, and maybe we can get a run of them made or something like that, and that way we can offer them to you guys as well. I'd like to, just because I think that is the proper way to run that setup, but it may not be something they're interested in doing over the course of multiple components, so we'll see. Moving on. Today we actually have a really good step forward in the project, and that's going to be this stuff. You guys, I'm sure, knew it was coming, but this is a full World Superbike spec Suter swing arm, super long, and obviously much better feel and improved grip and feeling, stability specifically. It's a lot longer, so the thing is, you know, technically speaking, we might actually be losing grip in certain areas, because the reality is when you make a swing arm really long compared to the stock one, you're moving the rear tire away from the center of gravity on the motorcycle, effectively decreasing load in some ways. So it's something to keep in mind. A lot of people are, oh, these things just add a bunch of grip. Not necessarily. What it might do is just make the bike more stable. It give it the ability to drive forward better, but it's not just about just maximizing grip. We do need the bike to spin at some point, and so it's a bit more complicated than simply just making the bike hook up better. And inevitably, it seems like these things just keep getting longer and longer. So this one's going to be the longest one we've ever run on our R1. It's quite long. I don't know. I'm not going to get too specific, but I'll put it this way. The shortest that this swing arm can go is longer than the stock swing arm can go. So, and there's a very wide range of adjustments. So that gives you an idea. This thing's effing long compared to the stock one. And then to match it, we're going to put this RSP40. This is a World Superbike Spec Öhlins shock absorber. This is actually not ours. We're borrowing this from a good customer of ours who has a bunch of trick bikes and isn't using this right now. And he's been kind enough to lend it to us until we figure out our long-term solution. So we're just going to pop that guy on there. This is a specialized linkage. It's got a completely different ratio to the stock link, and it's designed to suit this shock absorber and the swing arm. So this setup is totally different from standard. This shock length is nothing like a stock shock, and again, totally different linkage setup. We've got this adjustable pull rod, and you have to basically correctly set the pull rod length relative to the shock length. So we have like a starting point here, but without a doubt we'll change this at some point before we actually go on track. So Martin's got the bike up here on the stand. We're using our handy Harris paddock stands that we've got special ordered here to accommodate our oversized evol pegs. And then he's just using this nice DRC Zeta chain tool to pop off this OEM chain so we can just remove this entire assembly here. And back over here, you'd probably notice that this chain box is kind of a big daddy, a little bit more than your conventional chain. That's because we're actually going to use a 150 link chain for now. And again, it's because of the length that we're choosing with our final gearing that we're gonna, well, where I'm gonna start us off at, probably 1642 or something like that. And with the wheelbase that we're anticipating that we're gonna need more than your standard chain. So we'll see exactly what we require with this thing, but that's why we've got this massive chain box. That's 150 link. And obviously we're not gonna be anywhere near that, but it's, if we were to use, I think the largest we can get in a standard 3D is 120 links, and we're for sure gonna be well over that. All right, everyone, so we are getting into this guy. We've got our subframe, or excuse me, our swing arm sort of mocked up. This is very cursory. Everything's in place. Linkage is partially installed. You can kind of see our pull rod dangling down there, and she's a dangler. And the shock is in place, but we've already identified a major issue. You can see there's a pretty considerable amount of contact here on the subframe, so that is not going to work. And we have some really cool stuff coming in. I don't want to say too much about it until it gets here, but we've got some stuff coming in that's going to resolve this. But for the time being, what we're going to have to do is just pull the subframe off and carry on without it until we come up with a more long-term solution. But you know, and that's fine, because this was never going to be a permanent subframe on this motorcycle. It's, you know, this is more kind of like your stock 1000 club racing level product, not necessarily a pro superbike component. It's a great piece, but isn't what we were going to stick with. So yeah, we're just going to have to fast track that removal and go ahead and carry on without a subframe and wrap up this part of the project and wait until we have a more permanent solution here. All right, so Martin's got the subframe removed, and we're going to next just go ahead and start wrapping up this first part of the install. So that's going to be, we've got titanium bolts for our linkage. We've got our sprocket carrier here. This is going to go on our Cormoto wheel, which we have specialized spacers to accommodate the Suter swing arm that we have in place. And then we're going to just go ahead and swap out the nuts on this sprocket carrier with some Zeta titanium sprocket nuts. Just an easy way to shed a few grams. So we're going to get right to that. Moving forward, we've got our wheel set up. Martin's got everything nicely equipped here. For the time being, we're just going to run 1642 gearing. And again, this is our Cormoto Apex 6 wheel. Right now, we've just got an SC1 Superbike slick on here. This is just an extra 42 tooth sprocket we had around. And as always, we have an SBU rear rotor. Tie hardware everywhere. And this is kind of just, for the time being, we're just using this for mock-up purposes, because we have not prepped this wheel with the anti-spin treatment that helps secure the tire on the rim, eventually, or essentially stopping the thing from the wheel from spinning within the tire. The anti-slip stuff's pretty important. And we're also going to be running the TPMS system that's provided by i2M on this electronics package that we're going to be starting off with. So this doesn't have any of that right now. We're just putting it in here just to mock it up and to have a roller. So we have another set of wheels. We're going to start by doing that stuff on that set, and then once we get that set fitted, we'll pull this stuff back off and get it all going. All right, so Martin's just going to go ahead and test fit this. We've got the lifters and everything in place now. Do not have our caliper fitted because we're lacking a set of 7 by 20 millimeter bolts that we're going to need to fit our rear caliper, which I'll show you next. Our Suter rear axle. One thing that's nice about this setup is, as you can see, the wheel kind of just sits in there because of the shelf setup that's on this. Really helpful. Alright, that's all in place. Clearance on the speed sensor looks nice. Everything looks pretty good. We'll probably mock up our chain pretty soon and just make sure our alignment looks good here. We did have these custom spec'd, and we just need to confirm that everything's nice and straight, so we'll get our sprocket set and deal with that later. Everything looks good though. It's a roller. Okay, and then here's the caliper that we're going to be using. This is basically the lightest Brembo rear option that we have available to us. I'll have to grab the scale, but I think this thing weighs about 300 grams. Barton, we grab the scale? Mm-hmm. But this is without pads, of course. We're going to weigh it, and of course it's completely dry. And right now we don't have a type lead screw. I do have one on order. We're going to pop that in there, of course. But dual titanium piston unit. There we go. Jesus, 199 grams. That is really light. That's probably over a pound lighter than a standard Brembo cast 84 mil aftermarket caliper. So gives you an idea. There's nothing there. Of course, now this is not going to do a tremendous job of stopping, especially given that we use a rear rotor that's completely, Swiss cheesed, so to speak. But it's adequate. It's certainly not going to. You're going to have a rear brake. It's just not going to be overly powerful. And there is an option that I've considered testing if we do find that this is lacking in terms of stopping power. Again, probably not a concern because we can use engine braking and our Suter clutch to control negative torque on the rear wheel. So I don't see this being something we have to worry about. But there's a 4-piston version of this that is only slightly heavier and provides adequate stopping power should this not be enough. So we've got some new hardware we're gonna put on this thing, and first and foremost we have this sweet little pivot bolt from ProBolt. Does not come in this color, although I think you can order a color very similar to this, but we always anodize our own titanium here, so this is just a certain voltage that Martin and I were just playing with. It came out pretty cool. And I'll show more of this later if you guys want to see it. It's pretty not that exciting, but it's fun to watch because you can really see all these different gradients of color when you do this. But anyway, this piece eliminates the need for 2 different components. Oops. And so it integrates the little washer. We're going to put that back on grams. Original is 58 grams, new version 32, so 16 or 26 grams lost. Not too bad. And then we've also got, we'll just see what that looks like installed. Not too bad. Definitely adds a nice little bit of pop. We're going to figure out what size nut goes on the other side and get one for that as well. And I've also gone ahead and done these caliper mount bolts down here. So we'll go ahead and get a caliper fitted. And honestly, I'm getting ready to go out of town again with the Westby crew so we can do some testing at Buttonwillow. So I'm probably going to just kind of wrap this up. I know there's a whole lot of nothing getting finished, but I feel like we made some nice progress. There's still a ton of work to do on this, and I don't want each one of these things to be 45 minutes long. Sorry, battery died again. Happens every video we make. It's a tradition at this point. But anyway, so we've got this caliper ready to go on. Got our pads in place and our newly anodized caliper mount bolts. So Martin, would you mind putting that in place? For sure. And I'm hoping we can find a way to, I'm going to be really busy, obviously, working at the racetrack with Matthew and the Westby crew, but I'd love to try to bring in the camera and document some of that stuff at some point throughout the season. Hopefully we can find a way to bring you guys in on some of that, because obviously that's a super cool R1 and a program that I've always been a huge appreciator of, and I'm happy to be involved in working with those guys so closely. So it'd be fun to kind of show some differences between what they're doing and what we're doing, and we're going to try for sure to blend the gap as much as possible throughout the process of building this motorcycle. But yeah, so everything's kind of mocked up now. We're probably still going to have to make some adjustments here, but it's at least a good start for sure. Starting to look like a motorcycle, and this thing's got a long way to go, but we're really happy with how it's come along. So I think that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching the video. For sure, we're going to have a lot of huge and exciting updates coming soon, so be sure to tune in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.